Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I wanted to talk about a poll carried out in Germany by the INSA Institute and as reported in the Bild newspaper regarding the credibility of the Merz government. So without further ado, let's get into it. The INSA Institute in Germany carried out a poll recently regarding the credibility of the Merz coalition government in Germany. And whilst the results are startling, I think for most of us out there, it was something that was expected. We continuously see this trend happening throughout Europe. So I think while it is slightly alarming, it was not unexpected. The results were as follows. Merz's coalition party has amassed a 25% credibility vote by those that were polled, and the AfD has surged ahead with 26%. So you've got also the Social Democrats coming in at 16% and the Greens coming in at a mere 11%.
Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, is facing a growing crisis of legitimacy, as nearly 70% of Germans reject his leadership, according to a fresh INSA poll published by Bild. The dramatic collapse in public confidence is shaking Berlin's political establishment, fueling voter anger, and accelerating the rise of Alternative for Germany, or AfD. The survey shows 67% of Germans are dissatisfied with Merz's performance, up 5 points in just 2 weeks, while his approval rating has dropped to only 23%. Even more alarming for the ruling coalition, 68% of respondents now disapprove of the government, signaling deep frustration over economic pressures, migration, and foreign policy.
Now, Merz's approval ratings have tanked, and 70%, up to 70% of those polled find that he is ineffective as a chancellor and he is not worthy of the position. The reasons cited for this are, number one, Germany's foreign policy, number two, the immigration policy, and thirdly was the economic strife that the Germans are beginning to feel. So let's look at these in a bit more detail. Let's start with Germany's foreign policy. Now, if you remember, Olaf Scholz was a lame duck chancellor. I don't know if you remember or you recall when Joe Biden was bragging about the Nord Stream pipeline and how if the Russians invaded Ukraine, how the Nord Stream pipeline would be terminated. And when prompted by the journalist as to how he would do it, because that infrastructure belonged to Germany and it was in the control of the Germans, and he said, we have ways, with a very smug grin on his face. And all the while you had this moronic Schultz standing there and just looking ahead with approval. Now, when you have somebody that's heading your country that is actively allowing your energy infrastructure to be manipulated to the detriment of your own people that voted you in, it doesn't bode well. So he was basically kicked out. You had Merz come in, and everybody thought that he would be better than his predecessor. However, he seems to have played along with the same script. And, the foreign policy, Germany's foreign policy is disastrous. They've continued along this EU directive of wanting to, my way or the highway, which is fine. However, in this global economy and in this global world where there are emerging powers that do not share your sentiment, it's becoming a real challenge. Furthermore, you've now gone and implemented all these policies that seem to be harmful to the German people as well as the German economy, and all those disastrous policies, as Donald Trump said at Davos, policies enacted within the last 10 years need to now be looked at, revisited, and repealed because they are not good for Germany. And you have this swelling undercurrent within Germany, within Europe. We see it here in the UK as well, where people are disgruntled, they're dissatisfied, and these are ethnic people of the land. These are not immigrants that have come in that are dissatisfied. And then you have those hard-working immigrants that have come in as well, that have embraced these European societies, their cultures, their values, that have contributed to their society, who are now sitting back and saying, hang on, this is not why we came here. This is not what we want for ourselves or our families. Where did it all go wrong? You then have Germany's belligerents, joining this madness within the EU and, perpetuating all these failed policies, but also now beginning to take on the United States, one of their largest benefactors. So you've got this discontent that has fueled the results in this poll. Then you look at the immigration policy within Germany, and people, ethnic Germans are not happy. Now, I remember when Angela Merkel opened the doors to the Syrian refugees coming in, I remember saying to my son, how do they know what is being allowed through those doors? Because whilst there will be genuine refugees, and whilst it may be a good humanitarian gesture, you're not vetting who's coming in. And lo and behold, you started having all these terrorist attacks because, everybody was slipping through the border. I watched a documentary the other day on one of the cities in Germany where it's unrecognizable. You have German citizens that are out of work, German citizens that have no recourse to services that were set up for them. However, the flip side of it is they're standing there watching foreigners come in, not contributing to the system, but being allowed immediate access to all these rights. It does leave a bitter taste in the mouth of somebody that has contributed, and their generations and their ancestors have contributed to a system that they now have no recourse to. So that is another factor cited in this poll as being the driving trend towards Merz's downfall. And the third thing is the economic crunch. Germany was doing well. It had Russian energy coming in, which it utilized. It was cheaper. It utilized it to rebuild the German economy, but at the same time it repackaged and sold on that energy. Why on earth would they go and kneecap themselves in the manner in which they did over a stupid engineered crisis like Ukraine? I have no idea. They've cut their nose to spite their face. And it's not only Germany. It's the entire EU, and it's us as well. And it doesn't make sense. We're now sitting with a problem where our energy prices have soared, where our elderly and our pensioners cannot afford to heat their homes because the prices are just exorbitant. And, it's a lack of empathy by these governments, not towards foreign people, but towards their own. So, and at the expense of their own. This is what for me is shocking. It's tantamount to taking your own wife, your own kids, your own family, your mom and dad, throwing them out onto the street, welcoming somebody else's family and treating them like royalty. I don't know how it makes sense. It just baffles me. But these are the policies that are being put forward. And the people are now beginning to understand that they matter less and less. And you have this undercurrent that is swelling, that is, reaching bursting point. And the problem you have in a place like Germany is that the last time you had discontent levels like this, you had the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. So Germany is also beginning to rearm. You look at the Treaty of Versailles, you look at what it meant for the Japanese and the Germans, the Japanese as well. They're beginning to rearm. And you ask yourself, are we now going to see a repetition of what happened during the Second World War? Because these events mirror what happened prior to the Second World War. The same anti-Semitism you see in the UK, you see all around the world, is the same thing that has happened in the past, prior to Europe exploding into the Second World War. And as a student of history, you can't help but draw these parallels. How the rest of these governments can't seem to understand that, I don't know, unless it's a willingness to embrace the anarchy that comes with a global war. Then it makes sense. But other than that, these are educated people. And how they go down this route, I don't know. But then again, you look at, Germany had Annalena Baerbock as their foreign minister. If you want to talk about somebody where even a quarter of a brain cell is too much, then she is an exceptional case in point. Because the woman had nothing going for her.
Is there any chance of Ukraine being safe in the long term if Vladimir Putin is still leading Russia?
If he doesn't change by 360 degrees, no.
What is this, Bindit? First you're my friend, now you turn a 360 on me.
180, you stupid spaghetti-slurping cretin. 180. If I did a 360, I'd go completely around and end up back where I started.
It's part of this Alliance 90s Green Party perpetuating and promulgating policies that were just insane. How she made it through today is actually a stain on humanity, because it says something about us and what we are prepared to put up with and put forward as representatives. Same thing here in the UK. Same thing with Starmer. Same thing with Sadiq Khan. We put these morons into power and we allow them to go out there and promulgate policy in our name that is not only disastrous for the world, but is disastrous for us. So I think for Merz, the writing is on the wall. However, I don't know what is going to come after him. Whilst the fear-mongering is that the AFD is this far-right extremist party, I've come to understand that anybody that doesn't agree with the narrative is deemed far-right. So, it's a perfect way of shutting down debate. Oh, you're a Nazi. Oh, you're a far-right. Oh, you're an anti-Semite. That's it. Job done. Discussion shut down. Because I can't seem to be able to have a conversation with somebody that is so extreme. I'm not looking at my own policies and how extreme they are in the opposite direction, but I'm ready to brand somebody else an extremist. And the fear there, the worry there, is that in between that not wanting to maintain a dialogue and keep channels open allows something far more sinister to fester. And when that ugly snake rears its head, it's probably too late, because it's crept in, and you have the inevitability of either a civil war or a world war, or I just don't see where Europe is heading unless these governments don't change course. The French, you look at the French, You just got to look at the French Revolution, I think it's 1789. When the elites lose touch with the commoners, when that empathy is gone, society becomes a very dangerous place. So if I were Merz, I would look at what can be done to revise those policies. Alternatively, step down, because what's going to come after him, or 2 or 3 moves after him, is not going to be good for Germany. I want to thank you for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.